Gentlemen, we've been over the rules. Protect yourself at all times. Follow my instructions. You're gonna keep it clean. Touch gloves, let's do it.
Khamzat Chimaev continues to train hard in Muay Thai Tiger, waiting for his next fight. As he said in an interview with the YouTube channel Captain Hardcore, the last 5 rivals refused to fight him, and the only one who accepted the fight was Robert Whittaker. But Boers was not satisfied with the date. Perhaps the UFC will try to adapt to Khamzat, and the fight will still take place. Hello fighters, with you MMA Predictions channel. In this video, I will give a prediction for a potential fight between Khamzat Chimaev and Robert Whittaker. But before starting this video, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and like it so that as many fans as possible can see the announcement of this fight. As I have already noted, it is very difficult for Khamzat to find an opponent. Everyone with whom the company wanted to bring Borza together refused to go out with him in the same cage. And recently, he posted a photo on his Instagram with the caption of a bad guy against a good one, hinting at a confrontation with Whittaker, and he had already managed to give the go-ahead for this fight. It seemed that it interferes with the organization of this fight, but there are many obstacles. If you rely on the same words of Khamzat, then they have already tried to arrange a fight. But as we know, Chimaev did not fit the date and place. As he himself stated, he has an American visa before March, and it would be more logical to hold this fight in Las Vegas and not in Australia as originally planned. Then we have a fee, and of course Khamzat is no longer the fighter who was at the beginning. He no longer wants to fight anyone, anywhere, and at any time. Now he has become a more popular fighter, and the usual payment for the fight no longer rolls. He demands a separate payment from the UFC for a fight against such a fighter. Look, lately Chimaev calls only the top of the division, that is, the top 5 semi-middleweights and top middleweights, and he rarely looks at the 10th and 11th lines, and this also prevents Khamzat from getting a fight. He chooses only eminent and hype fighters, and in the beginning, as you remember, the words "anyone I will smear" really mattered. Since he went out against anyone who was offered a fight, his answer was always yes. And now, alas, only for large cash, he is ready to say yes. But okay, let's not talk about the bad. The confrontation between Whittaker and Chimaev can really become truly cool. One is a calm and verified fighter whom it is almost impossible to bring to emotions, and the other likes to pin up, joke, and all sorts of things like that. In general, we will soon see how the fighters will promote this event. And we will move on to the fight itself. Let's analyze all the small details of this fight in order to understand who deserves to go to the fight against the champion next. Percussive style. Let's start with the percussion technique as usual, and Chimaev will be the first person I will analyze. Well, what can be said about him? A wrestler who has strength in his fists. He will not work in the stance for obvious reasons, but he will definitely spend a couple of minutes there. But against a fighter like Robert, you need to be very careful. If he wants to compete with similar fighters in striking technique, then he should train more in various boxing gyms. But some may say that he knocked out Ikram Aliskerov and Gerald Meerschaert. But I don't argue, but I said he has strength in his hands, and theoretically he can catch Whittaker with such a blow, although it is not such an easy task to cut it down. We've already seen Borza's striking technique in the fight against Gilbert, and that fight reminded me of a parody of Justin Gage, and this style is not quite suitable for defeating such a top. Now let's move on. Let's talk about Whittaker, and this fighter is truly a master of his craft. His movement, footwork, kicks. After Izzy, he is the best middleweight striker. Look how he declassed the wrestler Marvin Vittori. He did not let him come up and get close to him more than once. He poked and poked his punches at him all the time. Robert is a true master in terms of striking technique. He rarely knocks out his opponents, since he does not have the task of knocking out. First of all, he tries to show his opponent that he is better than him in everything, and only then closer to the end, when he knows exactly what he is winning, then he can connect strength and try to knock out. I think he will be able to defeat the current middleweight champion Alex Pereira, since in MMA Robert has adjusted his striking technique, unlike the Brazilian, who, I think, is not quite used to the new sport yet. Well, in terms of the favorite, everything is clear here. Of course it will be Robert Whittaker, who killed many top fighters, drummers, including wrestlers, which is not an unimportant factor. Playing from below. Then we have a fight, and such a test of Whittaker in the fight. I did not notice, that is, he was not in such positions as, for example, from below and something like that, so that I could understand whether he was able to rise and throw off his opponent. As for the wrestlers, of course he went out with them. The first one who comes to mind is, of course, Marvin Vettori, who, with all his top base, could not translate the Australian, and thus he had to work on his hands, where it became clear that he had no other plan for the fight. In fact, Vettori is the first wrestler in recent times who went to fight with Whittaker. The rest of the fighters are pure drummers who have nothing to do with wrestling, but if only Yoel Romero, but he has long forgotten about his wrestling roots. Now let's move on to Boers, and here we will have something to talk about. As you yourself may have noticed, Chimaev is a dangerous fighter. Every time he starts the fight with pressure, then he presses his opponent to the cage and then transfers it down. Only Burns was able to defend himself from Khamzat's fight. The rest were defeated and destroyed, but look who he went against. The only one who was a top fighter is Gilbert, and he made it clear that against rivals of a good level, Chimaev is not sweet. Meerschaert and Holland are not the kind of opposition that Boers needs, as I think Whittaker will be the first fighter who will be able to test Khamzat's skills from below. Let's see if he can also easily translate a fighter who has protection against transfers at a good level. In terms of the favorite, I think definitely and without any doubt there will be Khamzat, who has not yet given reason to doubt himself. His struggle has always been and remains the main trump card. Cardio spirit. What can be said about cardio if we rely on the same words of Chimaev? Then he would like to fight with him at a numbered event and naturally lead, which means that the fight will be in the amount of 25 minutes, and how he will pass this time. To be honest, I don't know. He somehow lasted against Gilbert in a 3-round fight. What can we say about 5? Well, he should work on these components, because anything can happen in a fight. As for Robert's stamina, everything is just fine. He has repeatedly passed distances in the amount of 5 rounds, where he looked good. Look at his fight against Vettori. In 15 minutes he was able to inflict so many blows on the head of the Italian. But at the same time, by the end of the fight he was not tired. It seems that he could easily go through all 5 segments of the fight. So Robert will definitely be the favorite. As for the spirit, here I will believe more in Boers, since he is always charged and hungry for fights, and Whittaker is not quite a stable fighter with his cockroaches in his head. Forecast. My prediction will be this: most likely the Reaper will win by technical knockout in the round 3-4. Chimaev, as I think, will not be ready for such opposition. I think it's not a problem for Robert to defend himself from Khamzat's passes, and after that start his game. The future of fighters. Robert, after defeating such a hype fighter as Khamzat, will raise his ratings and most likely he will get a fight for the belt. Since I don't see any other option, what can be said about Chimaev? He will clearly be defeated, but he will understand his mistakes and come back even stronger.